a wonderful story. Good afternoon, everyone. We're back, and I have a guest this afternoon to talk to us. A very interesting chap from Germany. His name is Carsten Dürer.
Hello.
And I asked him if he was a relation to Albrecht Dürer, and he said perhaps a distant relation.
Well, Albrecht Dürer himself had no children, so there is no direct line, but Albrecht Dürer's brother had children, and it could be, but in the 30 Years' War, so many books in the church were destroyed that we cannot be sure.
But your attention to detail,
yes,
that's the thing. Carsten publishes a marvellous piano magazine. It's called Piano News, published in Germany. Well, we were going to talk today a little bit about some of the aspects that this competition throws up.
Yes.
Because it poses many questions, I think, about not only competitions, but about how young people are studying and learning today.
Yes, absolutely.
So I thought we might begin with program design, because the judges, actually, the jury, award points according to how the programs are designed.
Well, there are, in this competition you have the choice of free program, and funny enough, a lot of competitors, there is only the rule that the program has to be from different areas or centuries to show different abilities of the competitor. But most competitors, it's funny that they choose a lot of Prokofiev, a lot of Rachmaninoff, and you ask yourself, everybody is really deeply attached to this kind of music or not? Or they only want to show off with their technical abilities. So I think there were a few examples.
But if I had these technical abilities, I would want to show off. I know my own temperament. But I was going to say, did any of the programs catch your attention?
Yes. Today, Daria Kiseleva made a very interesting program. She played a sonata of Antonio Soler, and right afterwards 2 sonatas of Domenico Scarlatti, both coming from the same Spanish background. Soler as a Spanish, Scarlatti working in Spain. So the older one with the younger one, the kind of comparison, and then Rachmaninoff, the Corelli variations.
Yes, that was very...
older one, and then Shostakovich, Prelude and Fugue, the younger one. So twice a comparison of the younger and the older one.
Yes, because the Rachmaninoff's based on Corelli's idea of La Folia.
Yes.
Because everybody set it in some way or other. That particular.
And this also goes back to the Baroque.
Right. Yes,
so it was built up very clever, I think. Yes.
And there was another transition which was very interesting for me today, from the Taneyev.
Yeah.
Taneyev to the Dobzhinsky.
Yeah, right.
The Dobzhinsky was the commissioned work for this particular competition, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so program design is one aspect. Something that struck me, and I can't sort of deal with this particular problem, perhaps you can help me, we could discuss it for a little bit. When you have high virtuosity like these people have managed to train themselves, and their professors have trained them, it always seems to me, not always, but often at the expense of expression. And often with a romantic piece, you get the feeling that young pianists are really very good at classical pieces, like Haydn, Mozart, and articulate, not so much.
Not so much in Schubert and Beethoven, probably.
No, that's
it's
true.
Level.
I've noticed that they tend to play Beethoven rather too fast.
Yes.
And it's not that sort of music, really.
Well, on one hand, they are all young.
Yes. But
yes.
Just because you are young, does this excuse you from most responsibility?
No, but
I think it's amazing that they can do what they do at their age. I agree with you completely. But can you use being young as a way of explaining why you might be lacking in expression?
Not only, no. It always comes also from the background knowledge, the missing background knowledge, I think,
Yes.
because a lot of young people or students don't know really a lot about the biography of the composer, in which circumstances the piece was written, where he got the inspiration from.
Right.
And I think still it helps to understand a piece and form it differently, phrase it differently.
I mean, we've heard a lot of Schumann in this particular competition. And I mean, the Schumann pieces that were played were all when Clara Wieck, her father, had forbidden the marriage to Schumann, and they were enforcibly separated, two lovers, desperately in love with each other. All of the Schumann pieces should have reflected this
deep sorrow
right.
and craziness, yes.
But you told me this morning, someone said something interesting to you, that knowing about it,
yes,
does this actually make any difference?
Yeah, a professor asked me if it makes a difference, or does it make the student play better? And it was a little bit strange, because it was after I lectured about background knowledge for certain pieces. And I said, no, probably not necessarily, but it gives a way to understand the piece better. And I believe that you play it differently. Better or not, you play it differently with a different approach.
Yes.
And I think it's very important. And especially with Schumann, you cannot divide Schumann and the literature. And his life and all.
Of course not.
Nobody knows Jean-Paul any longer, and he was so much in love with this author.
I'm so pleased you're saying this, because I've been pushing this point in all of these studios about how important it is to read, because I mean sometimes poetry was above music, a higher art considered, because it is music, but it also has meaning. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I tell also, I understand that the life nowadays is completely different, but I tell young students or pianists also, you don't have to read the whole book, but you have to know what's written in.
Right, exactly. That's very good, yes. What about the age of the participants? What do you think about this, the age limit? How do you feel about that? This competition has an age limit of 38 or something like that?
No, 32. A lot of times 30, 32. Well, I think it makes sense, because if you observe competitions without age limit, suddenly there are, excuse me to say this, some housewives coming which found their second love, piano, and they trained themselves with 3 pieces and they are going to stage. And I think competitions are done for young professionals. I think otherwise you have amateur competitions, which is fine. So an age limit makes sense. Otherwise you cannot it's also comparison, right? Competition.
Yes.
So
if you're using the competition as a stepping stone to a career.
Yes. It should be limited. It should be framed, the age, I think.
Right.
I think it's, but it's hard, like we have it now in this situation, in this competition. We have 18-year-old up to 30.
Yes,
so
it's a big gap.
It's a big gap, yes. And I think you hear it. It's completely different. Without judging, you hear experience. But sometimes you have also, looking back to very famous pianists, you had 16-year-old which sounded like 50-year-old.
Yes, exactly. Now, since you publish an expert piano magazine, what do you think about the pianos that we're using?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because in a lot of competitions there are more than one brand on stage. And in former times it was, most of the time, the most famous one was chosen mainly.
That's right.
Steinway & Sons was most of the time chosen. And I love it to see it now that there are 4 brands, we have to name them. Steinway & Sons, it's Kawai, it's Yamaha and Fazioli. And that the young pianists are standing up for the feeling what fits their their idea of
Right,
playing
right.
best. So it
And
was
the action, not just the sound.
yeah, both. I
Both
think
things,
it's
yes.
both,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
so here it was, especially in the second round, it was very even, and this I
Yes.
liked. You know, there was Steinway. They were all
So
even
they did
played.
statistics on that, and in fact, an equal number of
Yes.
participants played different pianos.
Yes, yes, and this I like because this I never experienced in a competition. That suddenly the Steinway was used, yes, but
Yes,
not
right.
as the one which is above.
Right. Well, one more question before we go on to a few excerpts. How did you feel about the set piece? Because I've got the music of it here. I can show you the music. This is the first page of the set work by Mikhail Dobzhansky. How did you feel about this work?
It's hard to say. I listened now 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Already 10 times.
Yes, we've listened to it. It's amazing the variations in approach to it.
Yeah, and it's always the same, you know. You get used by the ear to a piece, even if you read it during the play, and it has 5 pieces.
Yes.
In this moving frames, and I think it's like short aphorism to other pieces.
Yes.
And a few candidates got very far with it, I think. Also by using no score, so they played by memory, and I think it gives a certain kind of freedom.
What I noticed reading the score while they were playing is that a number of them didn't observe the quite difficult dynamic indications which can change from quadruple forte to pianissimo in one bar.
But this is normal. I mean, if you read the score of other compositions which are played, you see the same. They are not following the dynamics.
Well, we're going to have to move on because we've only got half an hour.
Yes.
So we'll go on to the last session of the semi-final with his name's Philip. That's right, Philip Linov. And I'd like to play an excerpt from Sergei Taneyev from his Prelude and Fugue in G minor. We're going to hear this spectacular fugue. It's absolutely astonishing piece of music. Yes, it's an amazing fugue, isn't it?
Yeah.
An astonishing piece of music. Well, we have to move on, I'm afraid, but to Satebol Kim, and I'd like to play 2 excerpts. First, a piece from Le Requiebros from Goyescas, Book 1, by Granados, and I thought she played this extremely well, this entire suite. Yes, love to hear the rest of it.
And only to mention that you choose now two compositions which are very special and not in the main frame of this competition.
Absolutely right.
So that
Yes.
was very good choice.
Yes, that's right, for the program design.
Yes.
Yes, there've been a couple like that. There was one by an obscure, for me, Finnish composer,
Yeah.
and another one by a Bulgarian.
Yes, Paderewski, yeah.
Okay, we're going to hear a little bit of the set piece, which everyone has to play mandatorily, and it's a composition by a Polish composer, Michał Dobrzański. I saw an opera of his called Tango in Warsaw, which was highly entertaining. Warszawska Opera Kameralna did it. It was marvellous. So let's hear a little bit of that particular piece. There will be a prize for the best performance of this.
Yeah, sure, it has to be, otherwise...
This might be a little hint, me choosing it. Okay, now, everyone, of course, looks forward to the concerto stage. I notice that the auditorium fills with people during the afternoons for the concertos.
The Mozart concertos.
The Mozart concertos. Oh, yes, the Mozart concertos. And I think we would like to play you some extracts from yesterday. First of all, the Taiwanese young lady who played Mozart so well in the earlier stages, Yunchi Su, and she's playing from the Mozart C major concerto, the Elvira Madigan concerto, and we chose her beginning of the last movement, the Allegro vivace movement, or Allegro vivace assai movement.
Yes.
Right. Carsten, wait a minute, sorry. Carsten, what are you looking for in a Mozart concerto?
Probably it's the most difficult concertos you can play. On one hand, you have to be vivid young, because Mozart was always young, and he wrote these concertos when he went to Vienna to show off as a pianist.
Yes.
So you have to show off, but on the other hand, you have to be an experienced player to play with an orchestra, like in a chamber music.
That's right, it's a chamber orchestra.
And still getting this sparkling ideas out of it. And it's always connected to opera. So you have to sing.
Exactly.
You have to sing.
Exactly right.
And this is so important. And this
I mean,
lacking a lot.
so much of what Mozart wrote, you can hear operatic arias.
Yes,
That's
yes,
exactly
yes,
right.
yes.
Yes. Well, we move on to Ilya Ostcharenko, who is the young Ukrainian sort of wunderkind here. He's playing the we got the Allegro, yes, from the A major.
Yeah.
That's the other concerto. There are only two have been chosen. One is the Elvira Madigan number 21 and the A major Köchel 488. So we'll listen to the Allegro from that with Ilya Ostcharenko. Yes, I think it's very nice. And he, as I was saying, he does a rather détaché right hand in this movement.
Yes, and also phrasing. But he's what we talked about age. He's 18, and I think the next example you chosen is Daria Kiseleva,
That's right.
who's 30.
Yes.
And I think you hear it a little bit in the way of experience, even that I know that Ilya already played this concerto when he was 10 already.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yes.
So he has experience with this concerto also.
It was just on the point of détaché. I was talking to a pianist in Trushniki Stroy who had been accepted for some lessons with Grigory Sokolov. And he said one of the first things Sokolov said to him was, "Well, you play staccato very well, but you don't play demi-staccato, demi-demi-staccato, and demi-demi-demi-staccato very well." Now, what is this telling us, though? The great refinement of articulation.
Yes. And what is missing is a lot of times a beautiful legato.
Yes, beautiful legato. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean,
there are also a lot of levels of legato.
As you see, Volodos has this natural, fabulous legato, which a lot of pianists envy, I believe.
Yes.
Well, let's listen to Daria Kiseleva. That's the last excerpt in the Adagio from the A major concerto. Just in case you think we didn't notice, this is the first movement
right.
of the A major, just in case you think we are...
But you heard already her qualities working with the orchestra.
That's right.
And this is most important. That's why you chosen this example.
That's right. And also the jury take a great note of how closely the soloist works with the orchestra. And I remember her, she was looking at members of the orchestra throughout the whole thing.
Yes.
I remember
and
that.
others didn't look at all to anybody.
No, that's right. That's right, exactly. Well, look, Carsten, it's been very lovely talking to you, and I'm very sorry you're going to be leaving us tomorrow.
Yes.
It's a great pity because you've been so informative and helpful.
Thank you very much.
And
it was
very
a pleasure.
friendly.
Yeah.
So from me, you'll see me again at another studio. So until then, bye-bye and enjoy the concertos online.